Beginning expat life can be extremely traumatic for a lot of people, and fear is a very powerful emotion, even for us. When we started thinking about leaving the US, one of the things we considered was, of course, how is it going to be life in a new country? But I am sure that had we conquered our fear before we actually moved, we could have had a lot more years enjoying life overseas. It would have been sooner than we actually did it. When you think about moving, there's so many things to consider. And in one of the last videos, I've touched upon how to choose a new country, and I'll leave the link down below, and things to consider when you move to a new country. We're not immune to having fear either. Now, some of the things that we considered and part of what kept us from enjoying expat life sooner than we did was fear of not having a regular income. Now, I had been working for so long, 30 years actually, and so the thought of not having a job was very, not having a steady paycheck was very, I'm not even sure what the word, it was worrying because it's something that you're not used to. So the fear of losing the steady paycheck was a very big one and something that I had to fight through. And in fact, when we left, I actually took a sabbatical. A sabbatical is like a little leave of absence, basically. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, this is kind of like the nice way to segue into being retired, early retired, because I could take the sabbatical, and then if I had to come back, I could come back. And if I didn't come back, then, I would be let go from work. So for me, that was a better option and it lessened the fear. So once I knew I could take a sabbatical and then leave my job, it made things a little bit easier, but it was a big fear and it was a big worry. And I'm sure it's for a lot of people. It stops you from pulling the trigger. The second fear I had was, are we going to have enough money, during our years before our 401k kicks in at the age of 59 and a half. So basically we needed money to last us through. I left work before I was 59 and a half when the 401k withdrawals could be taken without penalty. And Federico is even a little bit younger than me, so it wasn't something that he considered either. So we wanted to make sure that we would have enough of funds to see us through the years before we started drawing money. So that was another big fear. Now, the third fear we had was the what ifs, and we were bombarded with those. The last recession in 2008, we had a really hard time. We both had jobs, but unfortunately, a lot of tenants that we had in our rental properties did not. They lost their jobs. So quite a bit of them stopped paying rent. So what that meant was we both had to work extra hours, take on extra jobs. He started waiting tables to make ends meet because we needed to pay the mortgage for these properties. And there were big ones because one of the houses was in Los Angeles still after we had moved to Houston. So it was a big worry then, and it was a big worry when we were thinking about moving. It's like, what if another recession happened and people don't pay their rent? What are we going to do? We end up actually having to sell a house at a loss. It was very traumatic, but it was the one with the biggest mortgage, and so I didn't want to have to go through that again. But we just kept putting good money after bad, like trying to keep up with the bills, trying to keep up with the mortgage, trying to keep up with the taxes, and eventually we had to let go. So doing that was very traumatic, and so that was one of our worries was, were we going to have tenants that would turn around and do the same thing if there's another recession. Another what if was, you know, what if the money doesn't last? What if the tenants stop paying? What if we hit where we are and we can't come back? You know, what if we had, you know, sold everything and then we can't come back, we don't have anything, and we have to start from scratch. But realizing that, you know, if you take things one at a time, it's a little bit easier to solve your problems. For instance, we didn't sell everything, and looking back, we should have probably sold everything and made a clean break. We sold almost everything, and we put our stuff in storage. Now, it's a good idea if you think, you know, you're going to go back. But sometimes it's just better to like rip the Band-Aid off, like, you know, at once. So the stuff that we thought were so precious and antiques, and, you know, there were things that there were material possessions, and we left them in storage. And we ended up paying, you know, a fair amount of money every month to have this stuff kept. And we did that for almost 2 years before we went back to like clear out the storage. And when we actually went back and we started looking at the stuff, and you realize they're just material things. They're not really things that count. You know, it's not, we kept a few mementos, some photos and albums, but for the most part, we ended up giving everything away. So it was such a waste of money, all those hundreds of dollars every month for almost 2 years, and then having to give them all away. You know, it just didn't make any sense. And that's another what if that you need to think about and tackle before you leave. Looking back, like I said, I wish we had just, you know, done it all in one go, and that would have been a lot easier. Now, another thing that we worried about, and we should have done, was selling our house, our primary house. We had a tenant, and she was a good payer when we left the US, but she had 2 giant dogs, like Dobermans. And so the dogs did a lot of damage to the house. And this is something you don't think about. You have to repair the house when we're trying to get it ready for sale. And so we sold the house while we were abroad. And I wish we'd sold it before we left, because that would have made things a whole lot easier. It wasn't hard to do it from abroad at all. It wasn't. But, you know, the extra money going towards fixing things, and, you know, when we left it for the renter, it was in very good shape, and we should have just sold it then and forget about it. But that's, you know, that's something that everybody does differently. You know, you may want to just let go of everything, or you may just choose to dip your toes into expat life. But that is something that you need to definitely be aware of. So I wish that we had, personally, like, I wish we had done that. Now, I'm trying to think of any other things that we should have done. Maybe not telling everybody what your plans are, because there's so many naysayers and people that try to dissuade you. So it's better to make your firm plans and then let them know at the last minute, I think. Because there are a lot of people who are afraid of traveling or of moving, so they try to influence you. I think it's a misery loves company kind of thing. So so it's better to have all your ducks in a row and you're ready to go, and then there is no fear, because people can also make you fearful. Once they project their feelings of whatever country you're moving to onto you, you start getting fearful of actually making the bold move and doing it. So I think the what if your friends talk you out of it is also a big part. And looking back, I think if we had tackled this problem sooner, we probably could have left a full year before we started our expat life. So it's just something to think about when you're wondering what life is going to be like and what steps you need to take. Now, we have been away now for 7 years, and thank goodness the budget was right. And if the interest is there, please leave comments below, because I can tell you a little bit about how we were able to save up enough money to last us, or that will last us, 10 years before, for the 3 years before our 401k kicks in. But for now, I think that will do it. So don't let fear hold you back. Do what you need to do to have a nice life. We were originally supposed to film this video in Port Supplier. This is the beach in that neighborhood, and it was a very windy day, so I decided not to do it because it would have meant a lot of yelling, and you probably wouldn't have been able to hear me very well. So we decided to come back home. As you can see, the beach wasn't really too crowded, and everybody was social distancing, so that was good.